Shalom Avracha from Yerushalayim. This week we should like to speak about an important topic insofar as Torah Hashkafa is concerned, perspective of Torah, and the title of this year, as Hashem with God's help, is loyalty, generosity, and devotion. Point of departure, when we'll first speak about loyalty and generosity, is a very interesting Gemara in Mesechus Sukkah, the tractate of Sukkah, which of course delineates and describes all the halachas concerning Sukkah. So we have a very interesting story, but before we mention the story, we would just like to mention the context of the story, and that is namely that somebody who is a gazlan or a ganif, somebody who steals, robs an article from somebody else. So according to the Torah, we have a special din, special rule and regulation that he has to return the object itself. If it did not change appearance or whatever object he stole, he must return that object itself. Now, if the object should be lost or should be broken and it's not the original article itself, so then the restoration will be in form of money, the value of the article that he stole. Nevertheless, we have one exception to that rule, and that is takonas hashavim. When somebody stole, for example, wood from someone else and he built it into a structure, so he is not obligated to break down the structure, does not have to dismantle the structure, because this will entail a financial loss. So even though the article per se, the substance of the article has not changed appearance, it's the same wood, it's the same beams, nevertheless, it'll involve a tremendous financial loss if you would have to demolish this structure and return the beams themselves. This is called takonas hashavim. This is a type of regulation which the Chazal made in order to encourage Chazal to do tshuva, because if they'll have to demolish, dismantle the structure, it involves a financial loss, and they will, no doubt about it, be reluctant to do tshuva. So therefore, the Chazal said in such a case, they can restore the value of the article without restoring the article itself. So the Gemara tells us there was a certain woman, it's Gemara in Sukkah, Daf Lamed Aleph, portfolio 31, that she came before Rav Nachman, and she said to him, the Reish Galusa and all of the people that are associated with the Reish Galusa means he was the most prominent figure in the hierarchy of rabbinical authorities in Bavel during the time that the Jewish people were in exile in Bavel. So they had a leader, he was called the Reish Galusa. He was the head of all of the other leaders. He was the most prominent individual, most powerful individual in the hierarchy of the Jewish leadership. So his servants stole wood from this elderly lady, and this was Erev Sukkot, and she wanted it back. So she went to Rav Nachman, who was one of the most distinguished Talmidei Chachamim in Bavel at the time, and she cried, screamed, carried on that she wants the wood itself to be returned. So he said, no, the halacha is not that because and why they stole it, we don't know. This is the story, right? They don't have to return the wood, and the only thing you're entitled to is the value, and I will get the money for you. So she insisted she wants the wood and the beams returned. And then all of a sudden she exclaimed, you know who I am? I'm a woman whose father had 318 slaves, and you take no notice of me? So Rav Nachman said, you have no claim on the wood itself, only the cost of the wood. So we have a very esoteric line that the Gemara mentions, that all of a sudden she said, how dare you not take my side? You know who I am? I have a genealogy of a great-great-great-grandfather who had 318 servants. So we don't understand it. So Rashi says this refers to Avram Avinu within the context of the 318 men he took with him to conduct a war against powerful kings that outnumbered him by probably a ratio of 1 to 5,000. That's how Rashi learns. So what's the Pshat of the Gemara? Pshat of the Gemara would appear to be that, of course, if she was interested in bragging, boasting, and saying how important she is, she's a VIP because she comes from Avram Avinu, but she could have simply mentioned that Avram Avinu was Avamayim Goyim, he was the father of many, many nations. Why did she single out that he had 318 servants within the context of his preparation to conduct a war against very powerful kings? So, of course, the answer would be that she was suspicious. She would suspect that Rav Nachman refused to take her side and stand up for justice because he was simply afraid of encountering the Reish Galusa. After all, these were the servants of the Reish Galusa that misappropriated her wood. And obviously she was unaware that the halacha is that she only is entitled to the monetary value of the wood, but not for the wood itself, the beams itself. Our sages made a special ordinance that Kazan did not have to return it after it was utilized for part of a structure, which that was the case that the Gemara is speaking about on the eve of Sukkot. So she accused Rav Nachman of cowardice. And she told him, why don't you take an example from your illustrious ancestor? And I happen to be a great-great-daughter of that illustrious ancestor that courageously, heroically, was absolutely not one iota of cowardice. On the contrary, it was one of the great heroic deeds and the most courageous of all deeds that Avram Avinu undertook to try to rescue Lot. Was held hostage from armies that probably outnumbered him with a 1 to 10,000 ratio. So Rav Nachman obviously said that he does not have any fear of the Reish Galusa, but that is the halacha. So the question naturally arises, why did Avram Avinu undertake such a mission impossible? According to Derech HaTeva, right, would say there was not too much of a chance that he would succeed. So why did he do it? Number two, we have to ask ourselves a question. The narrative of the Torah, when it describes and delineates in great detail Lot, so we have a question, why was the Torah so concerned with Lot? And tells us in many, many details, spreading over 2 parshas, Lech Lecha and Vayera, so many apparently irrelevant details of Lot. What exactly did Lot contribute to our Jewish destiny? What did he contribute to our Torah wisdom that the Torah mentions him so many times? At the very beginning of Lech Lecha, he accompanied Avram, and he grew rich, and there was a quarrel between his shepherds and the shepherds of Avram. Afterwards, he departed, and he went to Zdoim, and in Zdoim, he, on occasion, there was Machnas Archim. One of the occasions was the angels that came to destroy it. So we know so much about Lot in great details, whereas Avram Avinu, until he was 75 years old, in the beginning of Parashas Lech Lecha, we know nothing about it. Torah introduces Avram Avinu, Lech Lecha, this is one of his trials and tribulations. Of course, other trials and tribulations, such as being cast into a kivshan or Asian, a burning furnace, because he refused to submit to serving idolatry, the Torah does not describe. Torah did not describe how Avraham Avinu came to be the Rosh Hamaaminim, the first of the people that discovered HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He realized that the whole cosmic universe is no more than instruments of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The power of the cosmic universe is not an inherent power, it's controlled by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And how we came to this realization in the age of paganism that thought that the sun was some sort of power to be worshipped, etc., all the constellations, the stars. So the Torah tells us absolutely nothing about it. So the answer would appear to be that the impression that we have that the Torah did not single out Lot in order to tell us with a focus of attention the story of Lot. That's not the purpose of the narrative. The narrative's main concern is to tell us something else. The Torah was concerned with telling us the central and perhaps the main attribute and virtue of Avram Avinu, which was loyalty and gratitude. And therefore, in order to emphasize Avram Avinu's main virtue, so we were told the story concerning Lot, because only through that story, indirectly, will we be able to understand this lofty attribute of Avram Avinu. Thus, the Torah is not concerned with Lot. He's not a history making, and he did not in any way shape the Jewish destiny. He was far, far from being a righteous person. We're interested in Avram Avinu, who felt committed to Lot, and for whose sake he went to war, as we mentioned a moment ago, with a ratio of 1 to 10,000. What is remarkable about this act of courage and heroism? That his loyalty is in striking contrast to Lot's behavior, because it was Lot who betrayed Avram. He committed the act of treason insofar as Avram is concerned. Avram was reluctant to take Lot when he had to depart from his homeland. Lot insisted that he comes, and of course, like the Gaon points out, Lot did not go because he felt that he was committed to Avram Avinu and his way of living, but Lot understood if HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised great financial success to Avram Avinu, so that it's a worthwhile undertaking, as the Gaon points out, to go with Avram Avinu. In other words, that which he went with Avram Avinu, departed from Avram Avinu's homeland, was because he had a hidden agenda. He had his own self-serving interests. And the proof is, as the Gaon points out, that as soon as Avram became rich, so ipso facto, Lot became rich. Avram Avinu was a generous person, so he shared the wealth with Lot. And as soon as Lot became rich, he departed from Avram Avinu. And where did he go? He went to Sdoim. Sdoim was the incarnation of evil. They had laws regulating against doing kindness. So Avram Avinu was the opposite of the character and as it were, figuratively speaking, the personality of the entire 5 cities of Sodom, because they were cruel people, and the law of the land was to be cruel and punish all kind people. So Avram Avinu and Sodom were 2 diametrically opposed poles. Here we have the greatest expression of kindness and generosity, as far as Avram Avinu's personality and character are concerned, and the opposite, the other extreme, was Sodom v'Amorah. And nevertheless, Lot left the Amura Oilam, says the Goyim, the light of the world, the civilized world, expresses itself through Avram. And nevertheless, cold-heartedly, he left Avram and he went to live in Sodom with the Rishoyim and the cruel, brutal people. And in the famous Rashi, what did he say? Rashi brings it down. Lot not only betrayed Avram Avinu when he departed with him, but he actually had the arrogance and impudence to say, I don't like Avram Avinu, and you know what? I don't like his God. Under these circumstances, we have to ask ourselves the question, why did Avram Avinu risk his life as well as the 318 servants that he had? Rashi brings down something which is more remarkable. It's above our comprehension. It's unfathomable. That 318 basically does not refer to the numerical amount of servants that Avram had. These were the people that he removed from, so to speak, his institution, and he took them to fight along with him. But it refers to Eliezer, whose numerical value is 318. So it was 2 people against 5 powerful kings. As we mentioned, this is above our comprehension. So the question is, why did he do it? What was the motivating factor? Was it because of his love for Lot? No. So Chazal tell us what the motivating factor was, because once upon a time, Lot did a favor to Avram. When he came to Mitzrayim, there was a famine in the land, and Avram Avinu departed to Mitzrayim, took Sarah Lot and all of his students, all of his Talmidim, his followers. And of course, like the Abarbanel points out, that even though the Ramban said that it was a chet that he went down to Mitzrayim, he left Eretz Yisrael, it was a sin of the part of it. Abarbanel said that by us we do not in any way, even if it's the greatest, one of the greatest of all, the Kubalim, the mystics, the Ariya could have said the Ramban, one of the 3 great mystics of all time, the great Rishonim, but on Avram Avinu, we don't have any pretension that we understand Avram Avinu. We don't even know how the sand and dirt that Avram Avinu walked on looks. He's above and beyond us. The only reason we learn these parashas, like the Abarbanel points out and everyone else points out, is myself a similar one, whatever moral lesson, didactic lesson we can derive from Avram Avinu. But to question Avram Avinu, try to understand Avram Avinu, so that's not for us. And even if Ramban says that it was a chet, we don't necessarily accept that. And like the Abarbanel points out, not everything was mentioned in the Torah. In all probability, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to go down to Mitzrayim. The Torah omitted that because it was unnecessary to say so, because we can understand it with our own intellectual endeavor to understand, if we have to understand, and we're not mechuyev to understand. So once upon a time, Avram Avinu received a favor from Lot. Right? He said in Mitzrayim, Sarah is his sister, not his wife. And Rashi says that Lot, of course, knew the truth, and he wanted very much to inform the Egyptians that don't believe the old man. Don't believe him. She's his wife. Of course, had he informed, so in all likelihood, Avram Avinu would have been eliminated. That seems to be the implication of the Chazal. He restrained himself, and he didn't inform, with self-control. So he did a small, limited favor, which objectively we would consider no great favor, insofar as he restrained himself and did not bring Avram Avinu, that was responsible for his wealth and was responsible for his success, into danger of being killed. And we all know that an informer, time honored by all types of systems of morality and ethicism, is the low shibboleth. It's a real base, coarse, cruel person. Restrained himself. And that single favor, say the Chazal, Avram Avinu never forgot. And because of that favor, he expressed tremendous loyalty and true kindness and generosity, risked his life to save lives. Unbelievable insight. And the reason the Torah mentions this, obviously, is because the Torah expects this of all of us. We're all required, like the Ramban says, to learn these parshias and to internalize the lessons that we learn from the great office. So the Torah basically requires this of everybody. And we all know, for sure, but to whom do we owe loyalty? For sure to our parents, our Rebbes, our Rosh Yeshivas, our Manhigim. We owe to a lot of people, but we're not going to get into that. Everybody, through his own self-introspection, could fathom who he owes it to. But the Midah is one of the most remarkable Midas that we have in the Torah. Because the Torah HaKadosh tells us something even more remarkable. Who else is a paradigmatic example of loyalty and generosity? It's Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah tells us, "Vayelech Moshe vayoshav el Yisrael." After Kadosh Baruch Hu appointed Moshe Rabbeinu to be the redeemer of Klal Yisrael, he was the redeemer. Without him, there would be no redemption from Mitzrayim. Kadosh Baruch Hu almost had to undertake negotiations with Moshe Rabbeinu until he convinced him that he wants Moshe to be the redeemer, and if it won't be for Moshe, there will be no redemption of Jewish people from Mitzrayim. So all of a sudden, the Torah tells us something which we don't understand the context. And Moshe Rabbeinu returned El Yisrael. What's the pshat? So Moshe Rabbeinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, you're the Lord of the universe. I cannot undertake the mission. He was already agreeable because Yisrael received me and opened his house to me. And I'm like a son to him. And for one who opens his house to his friend, the latter has to risk his life. That's called a Pesach, Pesach lechaveiroi b'nafshei mischayev loi. So here we have the source, according to the Chazal, for that expression. At Pesach, Pesach lechaveiroi, somebody opens up the door, welcomes somebody into his home, treats him like a son for an extended period of time. He's a stranger, but now he becomes like a son, and ultimately Moshe became the son-in-law. So he owes him his life. Loyalty and generosity are expressed and consist of owing his life. That's the lashon, that's the lingo that Moshe Rabbeinu coined, and this is the source for that expression. So he returned. He agreed already to go, but it was only on condition that Yisro renounces any claim of gratitude to him. And the Torah tells us that he returned to Yisro, told him the entire story of confrontation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Yisro, who showed me respect, says Moshe, in every aspect, gave me permission to go, and he renounced any type of claim to my loyalty and generosity. So, of course, this is remarkable. And the Chazal elaborate on this, but we don't have that much time. So we'll just mention what Reb Reuven Grozovsky points out, that Moshe Rabbeinu on a personal level was ready to renounce all self-aggrandizement. After all, he'll be the redeemer of the Jewish people. He'll go down in history as the greatest, or one of the greatest people of all time. He'll be able to give the Torah to the Jewish people. He'll be able to redeem the Jewish people. What's in store for Moshe Rabbeinu is beyond our comprehension, beyond our belief. In addition, Yisro also benefited from Moshe Rabbeinu. He was his Royet Zoin, and Moshe Rabbeinu was a distinguished person. So there was no question, it was a mutual, beneficial, practical relationship. Nevertheless, and this is one of the most important lessons that we learn in this parasha. This is insofar as generosity and loyalty is concerned. But we should also like to speak about devotion and dedication in terms of devotion to the tasks of the time. And of course, at the beginning of Parshas Vayero, we have the only time the Torah tells us in detail about the hospitality of Avraham Avinu. The Rambam already points out many times insofar as hospitality to wayfarers are concerned. So Avraham Avinu is a paradigmatic example. V'yitei b'vel shova, v'yikra sham b'shem Hashem kel oilom, and that's the motto of the Moreh Nevuchim. V'yita eishel b'vel shova. Eishel is a notrikum for achilo, shkio, v'levayo. That's food, drink, and he accompanied all darachim, and we learned the importance of accompanying wayfarers or guests from Avraham Avinu, and the Rambam explains it that that's more important to accompany them out, at least Dalet Amis, than the essential achila v'shtiya, the food that you presented them and the drinks that you presented them. They participated in a wonderful meal, 5-course meal. No, more important is accompanying them, because without that, a person gets the feeling that everything he received was no more than somebody throwing a bone to a dog. And the dignity of man will only be fulfilled, the feeling that he's a dignified being if the hostess accompany him, so that gives him that feeling. That's the very nature of it. So this is the only time that the Torah told us of Avraham Avinu. So we have to try to understand exactly what is the unique feature of this Achnos Asarchim that the Torah decided to narrate for us, and it's the only narration that we have. So the pasuk tells us, "Vayisoina vayar v'nei shloisha noshim nitzavim olav vayal vayorotz l'chasam." We know that Avraham Avinu was visited by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It says, "Eirlov Hashem ereinu mamrei." Kadosh Baruch Hu decided to visit Avraham Avinu. He was sick. Rashi says, as we well know, we'll just read Rashi. It was the 3rd day of his bris milah, and he was in great pain. Rashi says, well, Kadosh Baruch Hu decided to visit him. Like somebody visits somebody who's sick. Remarkable story the Torah tells us. And Rashi says, Shayel B'Shleima, he asked Avraham Avinu, how does he feel? We passed this over, but it is a simply remarkable point, and many of the great commentators point out that till Avraham Avinu's circumcision, so his relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Avram Avdi, was a servant of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all of a sudden, he's Avram Oyavi, he's Avram, my friend, my companion. It's if HaKadosh Baruch Hu longs and yearns for the companionship, the warm, intimate, friendly, cordial companionship of Avraham Avinu, and therefore he appears to him, and he speaks with him, communicates with him, communes with him. And all of a sudden, when we see these 3 archim, so we don't understand necessarily how Avraham Avinu knew what the correct thing is to do. So it says, "Vayomer Adnim lo imatzasi chen beinecha al tavo mi'al afotecha." My Lord, if only I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass on from beside your servant, as if to say, wait for me. And immediately, Vayorotz l'krosam, there's a lot of commotion, and Avraham Avinu runs to the Archim and extends hospitality to the Archim. Here we have Avraham Avinu, as you mentioned a moment ago, reached the ultimate, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu visited him, inquires about him, is concerned with him. So he has an encounter with Hashem Echad, with the only one that really exists, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What more could a person aspire to in this world? What greater form of happiness, cheerfulness, satisfaction, gratification can a person attain in this world? And yet the Chazal tell us, and this is the halacha, that Vayomer Adonai, it's kodesh, we paskin. It is more outstanding, more important to bring wayfarers, guests into your house more than encountering HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even when HaKadosh Baruch Hu undertakes the incentive to visit you. This, we're just saying over the words. We really cannot picture this properly. And we're sure that Avraham Avinu, correct, when he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please wait for me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did wait for him. We'll explain another occasion what Rashi means. But a very difficult Rashi, we'll leave it for the time being. You came to visit me. I really enjoy your visit. I reached the climax of what a person can reach in this world. Yeah, nevertheless, travelers have come, and I have to attend to the travelers. So please wait for me. So the Chazal tell us that these lonely travelers on a hot, boiling day were, as it were, more outstanding than continuing his interpersonal relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, at the end of the day, that's halacha l'maaseh. If it would happen to us, we would have to do the same thing, because after Avraham Avinu did it, so it becomes normative. So, of course, the Sfas Emes points out that the pasuk is difficult to understand, because it says Vayar, Vayorotz l'krosal, they ran with great alacrity to greet them. Vayishtachu arza, he bowed down to them. And yet, the Chazal tell us that Pshuta Shel Mikra, the simple pshat at this point, is that Avraham Avinu was unaware that they were angels. He actually thought they were human beings, but he also suspected that they were Ovdei Avodah Zarah. That's why his first request was Yirchatzu Raglechem, wash your feet. Says Rashi, since according to the sages, he actually thought, says Rashi, according to the Chazal, they were Arabs who were not only idolaters, says Rashi, they undertook the most debasing and demeaning idolatry, also beyond our comprehension. They bowed down to the dust of their feet. Word for word, Rashi says this, V'rachatzu raglechem kisovo shehem Aravim. He thought that they were Arabs, shemishtachavim la'avak ragleim, that they bowed down as an act of idolatry to the dust of their feet. We say we don't understand this. So he was very diligent, meticulous, that they should not bring in, people did not wear shoes or sandals in those days, avodah zarah to the house. So this is impossible to understand. Why did Avraham Avinu pursue them, run after them? He prostrated himself to them, like this Sfas Emes points out. And we're dealing with total strangers. And Avraham Avinu insisted that they first wash their feet, because it's all probability they serve avodah zarah. What motivates this excitement and this commotion on the part of Avraham Avinu? Like the Sfas Emes points out. Also, it's difficult to understand why Avraham Avinu addresses himself to them with such great hachnoyas, submission, more than respect. He calls them in the third person. Al nosava me'al avdecha, according to the other interpretation Rashi brings down. So it comes out that the impression we have is that Avraham Avinu is their servant, and they are the royal, noble people. So apparently, we have to derive from this parsha a very fundamental lesson. A very important lesson that is la halacha according to the Chazon Ish. We'll see in one moment. Apparently, we derive from this parsha a yesod, that in the time where people were in the category of a tinoik shenishba mamish beinoik de'avodah zarah. The time of Avram Avinu, historically, there was a time where people did not believe in monotheism. The father of monotheism, that there's one God, is Avram Avinu. At that time, everybody was oiv de'avodah zarah. So in such times, when the atmosphere is saturated with a darkness, with a blindness, that there is no Rebbeinu Shloim in the world, the outside factors are overwhelming, overpowering. People are influenced by atmospheres, by environments. And there's no question about it that even according to the halacha, like the Chazon Ish points out, that evil environments to a large extent produce evil people. There's no question about it. The Rambam says in Hilchos Deis, Darka Shalish, the nature of a person is to be nimshach, is to be influenced by his environment. And we have an environment which is saturated with evil people, and they'll produce even righteous people to do evil things. So the only alternative is to run away and go to a desert. We once spoke about this, Rambam, the way the Chazon Ish explained it. We'll just repeat it very simply. So the Chazon Ish quoted Reb Chaim Brisker that said, who is the Rambam speaking to? If he's speaking correct to somebody like me, and I would have to escape my evil environments, as the Rambam says, in our days, it's quite frequent evil environments, and I would have to go to a desert, so I would become insane in 3 days. I have nobody to speak to. So perforce, he's speaking to the greatest person possible. And the Rambam says that that great person who could withstand living an isolated, lonely life by himself in a desert, had he remained in an environment that's saturated with evil people, so he'll also become ruined. And the Chazon Ish said this week was his yahrzeit, Tes Vov. On Monday was the yahrzeit of the Chazon Ish. He says that this Hilchos Deis of the Rambam is the same halacha for him as halacha in Hilchos Shabbos. So when realistically the entire world is simply ignorant of the existence of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and that he is the owner of the world because he created the world, and it was Avram Avinu who undertook the mission of proclaiming Kaviyachol to be the creator of the world, the owner of the entire world. Hashem owns. He's the proprietor of the entire cosmic universe and the people thereof. So to achieve this lofty goal, Avram Avinu held that first and foremost, he must attempt to make a hiskarvus with the people, come close to them. And only if he's close to the people, he can influence them, instruct them, and tell them the truth. That there's one Kaviyachol, there's one God. And the ways and means to achieve this goal must be to express his own personal conduct, a great respect and even reverence to the people that he wishes to be Mekarev. And perhaps then he'll be able to make them followers of his emunos, the deis, of his beliefs, and attain the ultimate goal. Like the Untla says, "V'nefesh, Asher b'charon." Like Rashi says, "Nisan takas kanfei Hashchini," brought them under the wing of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is the only way you can succeed. And since these parashiyos, as we mentioned a moment ago, the Torah are instructive and they are eternal for all ages. So we derive one important yesod that is relevant to every single Jew, Basher Hu Sham, And it's not only in Hashkafa, we'll soon see the Chazon Ish says it's the halacha, that it's relevant to every Jew. We must discern that we carry a double load. On the one hand, we're responsible to participate in the great movement of Mekarev Rechokim, those that are ignorant of Judaism, that even might be anti. So we have to be Mekarev, and we have to bring them into the fold. And on the other hand, we also have to be alert and diligent and meticulous, not to bring into our homes, and by extension, into our personal, pneumistic personalities and character, in the broader sense, our personal lives, avak, avodah zarah, even a little iota of avodah zarah. It's a very difficult task. This idea was expressed by the Ramak in his classic sefer on the Yud Gimel Midah Shel Rachamim in Tomer Dvoira. It says, "Lo yehechzik lo ad apoy." Kadosh Baruch Hu does not stay angry forever. Shafilu odom shechoto, a person that sinned, Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu machzik ava, Kadosh Baruch Hu will not remain angry for a long period of time. And even if he will be angry, it'll be short-lived, and afterwards he'll nullify his anger. Even if the person or the community were not chayzer b'tshuva. That's lo yehechzik lo ad apoy. And ipso facto, v'olachto b'drochav is mechayev all of us to go in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So zu mido ru'uya lo odom le'esnaigim chaveiroi. This is the way a person should conduct his own personal interpersonal relationships. Lo yachzik kasoi, never be angry at someone. Gamim hu afa muter le'odom. Even if it will be mutter for a person to be angry, like Gemara says, Kisere chamor, soinacha roivetz tachas masol. It's a Gemara. We're quoting here from Psachim Daf Kuf Yud Zayin. If you see a donkey of your friend that collapsed because of the load, so it doesn't say friend. It says soinacha, your enemy. The Chazal say, why does it not say Reyecho? Like it says all over, it says Sanacho. So what's the sinner? So he was over in Aveiro. And there's only one aid. We're talking about something which requires two aides. Stole money, did something Gemara, whatever. Won't get into the pratim, the details. But we're talking about a case where he's an Eid Echad, he's one witness on something which requires two witnesses to be attested by Bezdin. And all of a sudden, the Gemara tells us another interpretation. Why does it say Soinacha and not Chavercha? Because it's a mitzvah l'snaisai. You should hate him. Because Yeras Hashem sinas ra. That's what Rav Nachman says. So we're talking about somebody who committed a pretty severe aveira. There's only one witness that can attest to it. And yet, the Ramak tells us, after he brings down the Gemara, Shevoik Yas de Belibach, at this time, you have to rid yourself, divest yourself of the hatred you have for the evil that he committed. Because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even if a person does not do tshuva, a community does not do tshuva, will not be angry for too long. And we hope that in the situation we're in, we will do tshuva, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't be angry too long, and everything will come to a conclusion in the bitter situation that we're in, and it'll be a very happy ending. And that is the midah of lo yehechzik lo ad apoy. So can a person lower himself to the point of ignoring that it's not fitting to help such a person? That the Torah tells us it's a mitzvah. Says the Ramak, because only through showing him avo, you'll influence him. He'll think, look, he knows that I did an evil act. Nevertheless, he's showing respect. You know what? I'll show him I'm worthy of his respect, and I'll change my way of life. That's what the Ramak says. Derech avo. And if somebody is a zoken enlefik foidoim, if somebody is a very dignified individual, and perhaps it's not lefi his covet to act so submissively, so we learn from Avram Avinu that one can relegate to strangers, that they should be the manhigim, they should be the great outstanding leaders, and he's no more than a servant to them. Perhaps the result will be, like the Ramak points out, that the strangers will be followers after him, and they'll become aware of what the truth is, and they will profoundly recognize that Kaviyachol is the Balabayas, and everything and everybody belongs to him. We have no other way. And we mentioned a moment ago that 2 days ago was the Yahrzeit of the Chazon Ish. Most people we mentioned this to do not believe that it's the Chazon Ish, but it's the Chazon Ish. Sounds more like Rav Kook. The Chazon Ish in Hilchos Shchita Yeridea Simin Yud Beis says as follows: we know there's people that are reading Venu Maimed. We have epikurs and people that deny Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the halacha is that you are allowed to cause them to go into a deep pit where they'll die. If you don't take them out, we read it, ve'enu malim. This is the halachic response to people that are anti-religious, border on kfira, apikarsis, or moisim, informers. So the Chazon Ish says something remarkable. Remember the first time I saw this, I was totally overwhelmed, blown away. The nearer day din Meridim, when is there a din of Meridim for such people? Bizman shashkachosoi yisbara guluya. Kama bizman shayognisim mitsuyin umishamish baskol. In a time where there is a revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu in this world through means of miracles, and a baskol, a voice emanates from heaven. Under those circumstances, when there is a total revelation of the majesty and glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if somebody should be in Apikairas or a Kaifas, or the din is by reading Ve'numayda, you cause him to go deep into a pit, and you're not taking him up from that pit, even though you endanger his life. Also, there's another condition for this halacha. The Tzadikei Ador are tachas hashgochas protes aniras lein kol. Everybody sees there's a special hashgocha, supervision of Tzadikei Ador. The Koifrim Oz, and the Koifrim at that period of time, with their evil, unique hatoyas hayetzel, the taivus, they go after lust and hefkerus, total disregard for the Torah. B'shas, we see revelations on a daily basis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory, majesty, the hashgacha that he has over tzaddikim. In such a case, it's a mitzvah of bir rishoyim, because it'll be a tikkun for the dor. Shakol yedu ki adachas ador maybe paranos, because if these people will have any influence on the dor, so things will change drastically. This dor will be punished. and there'll be dever, v'cherev, v'rov v'oidom, pestilence, famine, and there'll be milchamas in the world. But bisman ha'helem, when there's no revelation, we don't see to the revealed eye. Revelation of the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's v'helem, and at that time the emunah is nichraso, has been divested from dalus ha'am, from the ignorant of the people. So there's no the Maisa Iroda, so you're not going to accomplish anything. What are you going to do? You're going to take these people and put them in a bar. What are you going to accomplish? On the contrary, you'll just add to the anti-religious movement, because they'll look at this as an act of corruption and alimus, of violence. Chas v'shalom, v'kiven shekol atzmeinu l'saken. Our whole purpose is only to improve the world. So there is no, this din does not apply at a time that it will not make a tikkun for the item, it will not improve, ameliorate the item. On the contrary, it'll be destructive. And now the Chazon Ish writes, you can look it up, Shechita Perek Beis, Dibur HaMasma starts the Nira. Oleinu lachzirom ba'avoisais avo. We have to be mekar of these people through tying them to us with love, ulamidim b'keren oira, to show them the true light, the Meshia, then magas, to the best of our abilities. This is what the Chazon Ish said. This is what Avraham Avinu did. This is what the Ramak is speaking about. Of course, there's always an exception to the rule. There's no question about it. If somebody, a group of people, agitators that are paid money, go on Yom Kippur and they pull down the mechitza, where the women were not upset that there was a mechitza in Tel Aviv on Yom Kippur and Dizengoff, take sidurim, violently throw them on the ground, use physical violence against those that davened. So these people, there's not too much of a tikkun for. And this sinno is a sinno of a poisoned, perverted mind that we can't do too much about. And on the contrary, it could be that we suffer immensely because of them. What the Chazon Ish mentioned is in general. And we would just like to mention that a story that I heard from Uri Zohar. Uri Zohar was a famous actor, #1 in Israel. All of his movies were blockbusters. He was a remarkable person. He was Chayzer B'Tshuva, and the great tikkunim that he did are unbelievable. But he was a big television and movie personality. So the television station that he used to come to in Jerusalem from Tel Aviv is located between the Tachna Merkazit, the central bus station, and Geula. And he was told by the people, by the liberals of Tel Aviv, never park your car. You have to go to Yerushalayim in the vicinity of Geula, because if they see you parking your car there, and they see that you're not a religious person, so they'll undertake violence, and they'll break your car, and who knows what they'll do to you. And he said that this is the way he was indoctrinated against religious people. They're violent, subhuman people. We hear this today too. Anyway, he never parked his car in Geula. One day, he arrived late. He had to get to the show on time. So he had no choice. All the parking places were taken. So the commotion that he was under, so he parked his car in Geula, beginning of Geula, the religious section, and he ran to the television station. Afterwards, he went to get his car, went into the car, and it was stuck. And all of a sudden, he tried to ignite the engine, didn't work. He saw two Hasidish Avrechem, two young married men, some 30s, early 40s perhaps, coming toward him. So he said he was scared to death. Closed the windows, they knocked on the windows, and they said, right, open the window for a second. So he said in this confusion, even though he was very scared, he opened the window. They said, look, there's a gas station not too far, right? We'll push the car there and won't have any problems. So please get out of the car. He wanted to help them. He said, we don't need your help. And they pushed the car to the gas station. It took him about 10 to 12 minutes to do so. He thanked them, and they said, have a good trip. And that was it. They smiled. So Uri Zohar said, that's was the catalyst to do tshuva. He saw that two people volunteered to help him, took time off, physical activity. And these were, of course, people that the liberals, the leftists of Tel Aviv said that they were subhuman people. So he said it was a nes min hashamayim that this might happen. He saw that these were very, very generous people, kind people, that nobody in Tel Aviv would have done such a thing. And they did it with a smile, and they did it happily, and they did it. This is the way we're Mekarev people, who can, as I say, lend themselves to be changed. It's not so easy. A person has to know how to lower himself, to show dignity, and respect, if not down, reverence other people. That's how you do it. And Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was Mekarev hundreds of Sfardim through the same process. When he was the Rav in Bukharin, so there was a barber who kept his store open on Shabbos, and he shaved with a razor. So Rabbi Ovadia used to come in every day and said, please come to my home. I want to speak with you. He says, no, I don't want to speak with you, Rabbi Ovadia. Yeah, you're a big Rav, I don't want to have anything to do with you. He came in again and again, and one day he brought cake, and he brought drinks, and he said, this is a day, right, you come from Baghdad, of the yard site of one of the great leaders of Baghdad, Tzaddik Shel Baghdad, come, show you that you have, we could show that you have some sort of connection to your shayresh, to your roots. So he was overwhelmed by that. He participated in the little kiddush for the Yom Elul for the yard side of the Tzaddik of Baghdad, and through that, he himself became frum. He himself didn't shave with a razor anymore. He kept clothes on Shabbos, and he had a sign, a gigantic sign that said, "A ben yeshiva does not have to wait in line." And when he died, I went to Menachem Ovel, Yosel Zenvit, and he had 8 sons with long beards sitting there, and they said that our father went to Olga Bavadia's shiurim, and he knew Orach Chaim, Tur Beis Yosef very thoroughly. This is just one of hundreds that Rabbi Ovadia was Mekarev through submission, through avoisei so avo, and this is a tremendous lesson that we learn for those that are devoted to the great task of trying to change our brethren, and we need it desperately in our time. This is the methodology, and the Ramak, Chazon Ish said, this is the way that we will achieve, as Hashem Yisbarach, the important knowledge of Hashem Echad, Vayomri Hashem Echad, and through that will bring us the ultimate redemption, B'Meheiro. All the best to everyone.